Already my presentation is acting up, so hopefully don't worry, I'll roll through those links again, everyone, but hopefully it bears with me. I'm not really sure why it just started going off on its own.
Maybe it's a sign that we just need to start, Kit.
Maybe. Take it away, Jamie.
All right, you guys. Well, with that, I guess we will go ahead and get started. I just wanted to introduce myself. I am Jamie from the marketing team here at Schedulicity. And I wanted to welcome everybody to today's town hall. Before getting started, I would like to go over a few things before we get started with today's town hall. So you can view all past and upcoming town halls on our website at essentials.schedulicity.com/webinars. And also we will be sending everybody a replay link after this town hall today. If you are looking to sign up for a new Schedulicity business account, do remember that you can sign up at essentials.schedulicity.com/sign up to get started. And if you aren't aware, we are waiving all of our subscription fees until July. We will also be awarding an extra Schedulicity Cares grant at the end of today's town hall. And we will be linking the entry form in the chat box. So make sure that you do fill out that entry form and send it in to us. It only takes a couple minutes to apply. We do just ask that you enter by 1:30 Central Time, just so we have enough time to go through all of the entries. If you aren't familiar with our Schedulicity Cares grant program, we have been giving away a grant, a $500 grant every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we are just asking that you send us how you are caring for your community during this time, and then we will get you entered, and then we select from those that have entered. And then lastly, as always, if you have any specific questions about your business, you can reach out to our customer experience rock stars. They are always happy to help. And we have a couple here with us today for this town hall that can answer any questions in the chat as well. All right, so moving into today's town hall, I am very excited because we have Kit Warchol, our head of content here at Schedulicity. And Kit grew up in newsrooms. Both of her parents were investigative reporters for various newspapers and magazines all around the United States. She wrote her first article for a local newspaper when she was just 15 years old. Before joining our team here at Schedulicity, Kit was the editorial director for a media platform for women that is called Career Contessa, and also a freelance writer for publications including Fast Company, Refinery 29, Coveteur, and Girl Boss. She's also served as a copywriter for fashion brands and ghost wrote a book proposal that got picked up by HarperCollins. Currently, she lives with her dog Monk and cat Lasagna in a house in Northeast Los Angeles, and has been spending her quarantine attending Zoom wine tastings and dancing with Ryan Heffington. And she personally is keeping me motivated for my at-home workouts. So thanks, Kit. She's also really, really good at writing polite emails in complicated work situations. So with that, Kit, I would like to hand it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Full disclosure, no longer a blonde. I also normally would have bangs, but I'm fully embracing the quarantine lifestyle of Los Angeles right now, so bear with me. I'm thrilled to be here today. For those of you who have attended webinars in the past, I am typically the person who gets to give away the $500 grant at the end, which is one of my favorite tasks, but I've handed that off today to talk for a while about writing, really, but writing empathetically and messaging empathetically during sensitive, difficult times, which I think we can all relate to. So I'm going to give you seven tips on how to write that are sort of technical oriented tips, but we'll also talk a little bit more generally about how to think about the way that you're communicating with clients or with other businesses during this time. And hopefully I can get my presentation to start going. So I wanted to start really quickly because we know that the title of this webinar today is Messaging Empathy. And I want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what empathy is and why we think it's so important during this time, and why, frankly, I created an entire presentation around it. So empathy, the noun that I found just in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. So the idea behind this is that empathy isn't sympathy. Sympathy is a fantastic thing. It's this idea of being on the outside looking in and seeing someone going through something and feeling sorry for them. Empathy is something else entirely. Empathy is the ability to really be in someone else's shoes and relate to them, even if you can't relate to the situation that they're going through. And I think that what's so interesting about that right now is that we're in a position where we're all going through this together. We're in this quarantine together. We are dealing with the process of reopening together, but every single one of us is going through a different situation with regards to what's happening right now, right? Some of us are out of work, some of us are not. Some of us are thriving and going to Ryan Heffington dance classes. Some of us are scared and freaked out and worried. And frankly, most of us are going through this all the time at every moment, right? Some days I wake up completely in an anxiety mindset. Other days I wake up thrilled and excited that I get to spend the afternoon outdoors taking calls from my backyard. And the beautiful thing about empathy is that when you approach everything that you're doing and the way that you're messaging and communicating with clients through a lens of empathy, you can make space for all of those feelings and for the potential feelings of clients that are going to be dramatically different from your own. So that's why empathy. Now I'm going to play a little fun thing to give you an idea of what this looks like in context.
I've never. All right, what's it gonna be here? Let me ask you something. When you go into a store, does it bother you that they make the security guard just stand there all day? No. It didn't bother Susan either. That's why I'm different. I can sense the slightest human suffering. Are you sensing anything right now? Let me just say this. It is inhumane to make a man stand on his feet in one spot for 8 hours a day. Why shouldn't he have a chair? Well, what about criminal activity? He's got to be alert. But he can't jump out of the chair? How long does that take? Here, look at this. Here, watch. Criminals, boom, come up. Stop it. Stop it. Maybe they offered him a chair and he turned it down. Would you get out of here? Who's going to turn down a chair? I would be very interested to know how he felt about all this. Maybe I'll have a talk with him. I know you will.
Okay, so it's a little bit of an odd aside, and I think it's kind of funny to note that apparently in no episode of Seinfeld ever is the word empathy used. But I do think that this is a really great scene to exhibit and demonstrate what empathy can be. So we've got George here who's worried about a security guard, right? But what I think is actually the most sort of beautiful example of empathy in this comedic skit is that George is thinking about the smallest issue that someone might have and the ways that making one small change or offering one small element of help can improve that situation dramatically, right? It's not just a chair, it's about comfort, it's about feeling seen and respected. So he's thinking in terms of small things he can enact and change in order to help one other person who's going through something completely different from his own life. The other element that I think is really interesting in this scene, and we'll talk more about this in just a minute, I think it's tip number 2, is this idea that Seinfeld brings up of asking the person how they feel about not having a chair. So this idea that empathy is about not only trying to see yourself in someone else's shoes, but also communicating with those people and asking them what they need from you in order to adapt to those needs without just making assumptions about what they need. So we'll get into that more in just a second, but I thought that would be a really great way to kind of warm us all up. One thing I do want to say, and this is just going to be a brief soapbox moment before I get into the more technical tips, is this. I know that there are probably a lot of you that are not writers and that actually dread writing. Frankly, I often dread writing when I have to write something new that I haven't done before. But one of the things that I'm really excited about in terms of the people who are here today for this talk is that you are all fundamentally some of the most empathetic people in the world. And I don't say that in any sort of exaggerated sense. What I love about working at Schedulicity and with all of these service-based businesses is that you got into this to help people, and you do this for the contact and the connection that you make with your clients every day. So you are a natural at empathy. You think about what you can do to make people's lives better, whether you're a hairstylist or a massage therapist or a yoga instructor. And frankly, some of you, I saw that we have some massage therapists here, and we've had some Reiki healers attend in the past. And what's fascinating is you actually know how to think about other people's pain and think about the ways that you can help them fix that pain through whatever processes and expertise you have. So despite the fact that writing and messaging might feel scary or difficult or confusing to you, what I want you to take away from this presentation, even if the other 7 tips mean nothing to you and you think that I'm completely bananas for even telling you to do these things, is this. Writing is totally something separate. Ultimately, empathy is about doing whatever you can, whether that's perfect or not. So your writing doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, empathetic writing is inherently imperfect because it's always a communication and a back and forth dialogue with your clients. So the one thing I would say to you is I would love for you all to walk away from here today and wake up tomorrow feeling like you want to communicate with your clients, your friends, your family, your loved ones in writing without it being an intimidating thing. And the best way to think about that is to just remind yourself that as long as you follow your gut, you as an empathetic human being will be able to message just fine. So that's my soapbox moment. And now I will do what you came here to see, which is all of the technical details. But I just wanted to start with that so that we're all on the same page. Okay. So like I mentioned, there are 7 steps in this, and I will run through them all, but they all are they vary in terms of technical details and also sort of thought processes. So step 1 is write like a friend. So what do I mean by that? When you're messaging empathetically, the number one thing is to think about how you communicate in terms of your voice to make it feel as human as possible. So often when we start writing emails, especially if we don't do it very often or it's not our expertise, we tend to default to the formal, right? You all had the high school English class where you had to write 5-paragraph essays. We all have this tendency, I think, when we're not comfortable with the words that we're conveying or how we're communicating, to kind of go into the big words, the Scrabble-friendly words, or to go into the more formal approach to language because we feel like that's what we're supposed to do. I'm here today to tell you that messaging empathetically, especially right now, you should be as human as possible. And that means talking directly to your audience. So even if you're sending a mass email to your client list through one of our marketing tools, you don't need to refer to your clients as my clients, right? You can speak directly to the reader as if you were writing directly to them one-on-one. So say say, I've been missing seeing you. You don't have to say, I've been missing seeing my clients. You can use conjunctions, you can use memes, you can use GIFs. Do whatever it is that feels natural for you. And one of the best ways that I suggest that you do this is to think about what if you were writing an email to your best friend, like whether or not, your best friend actually books with you to get her haircut or her massage. Think about how you would communicate with her in an email. And that's not to say that you shouldn't go to the extreme on this. And so don't overdo it, right? The schmaltzy elements are where I get concerned when you're kind of being a little too silly. And we'll talk about tone in a second. But if you start thinking about communicating with your clients just like you do when they're in your studio space or your salon or your business, you will start to write in the same way. And that's ultimately what empathetic messaging is. It's communication that feels natural and authentic, even though it's in writing and not in person right now. Having technical details again. So here's just a good quote, and there are a couple of these sprinkled in throughout, of Ernest Hemingway. So when people talk, listen completely. Most people never listen. And this brings me to number 2 on this list, which is put yourself in their shoes. So what I mean by that is that presentations. One of the sort of most difficult things about situations like right now when we're trying to message empathetically and sensitively in a time that's incredibly difficult for many different people for different reasons is that we have a hard time thinking of where to even begin, right? Like we're in the midst of a time that we've never experienced before, and we're going through a difficult period of closures that we've never experienced before. So where do you even begin communicating with clients, especially if you don't know what date you'll reopen, or you don't know what process you're going to need to follow based on government guidelines because those guidelines don't exist yet. One of the best things to do is to put yourself in the shoes of your clients by thinking about what problems they're considering and what questions they might have. So a great exercise before you even sit down to write the email itself that you want to send out is to ask yourself some questions around how they might be feeling. So what worries them? What do they love? What do they hate? What are they scared of? What are they excited about? What might make them nervous? What questions might they have? Where is the confusion? All these questions that center around feelings and emotions. If you start by asking yourself those sorts of questions before you even start writing, you can write the email almost in your own head, because all of these sort of empathetic messages should answer these questions before people even need to ask them. And granted, you won't always be able to answer questions to the best of your ability, because we're still in a very gray zone in terms of what the future is going to look like. But this is a really great place to begin. The other element of this is that you can ask them. So this is something I mentioned earlier with regards to the Seinfeld clip, but one of my favorite things about this world today is that we may be social distancing right now, but we are more social than ever. You can communicate with your clients through social media, which we'll be having a webinar about that coming up shortly, but you can also message with them through your own emails. At the end of every email that you write right now, you can be asking your clients to give you feedback. And actually, when we give you the templates at the end of the talk today, you'll see that a lot of these templates include a portion that says, if there's something I've missed here, email me and let me know. Or if you're going through something right now and I can help you in any way, let me know. And what's great about this is you can essentially ask clients what they need from you and then give that to them, whether it's discounts on products, whether it's a follow-up email about policies, but it's all within your control. And ultimately, the more you communicate with clients and the more that you solicit feedback, the more empathetic your messaging is going to be, because you're going to start hearing the other voices of other people who are going through it. So here's a great example of what I mean by putting yourself in their shoes and messaging directly to a client, right? For those of you who aren't familiar, this is a Glossier email. So Glossier is a beauty brand, one of my favorites. I'm currently wearing at least 2 of their products on my face. And this is an email, actually all of the emails today I've received during quarantine, which will be interesting. But this is an email I received that's very straightforward and very simple. And what I loved about this is the header, right? You're always right. It's speaking directly to me, the consumer, not to hello consumers, but you, me, I'm always right. But it's also speaking to how I might be feeling right now. We're all questioning what's going on and we're all feeling very uncertain about what's happening in the world. And this tells me that I still can listen to my gut and that this brand is not going to tell me what to do because they trust that I know what's best for me and what I need right now. And so this email is about going and buying whatever products you may need based on what you know you need versus them telling you what you need. And what's really beautiful about this is it speaks to this moment where we are really struggling with feeling confident in the decisions we're making. And this brand is telling me that they see me, that they hear me, and they respect me making my own decisions without them trying to influence it. So number 3, sorry, no, we're back to number 2. I have like the chat box blocking it. Number 2, but the last part I will say about this actually came from Lori Crete's webinar last week, and if you didn't attend, you can still watch the replay at our webinars page, which was a link that we shared earlier. But Lori made a really great point, which is important to remember, which is that you also will have different clients in different positions, especially in the coming weeks. And it's important to remember that as you're writing these emails, you're speaking to all of those concerns. So the example that Lori used is that you will have the people that are your clients that even if we go through a recession or having a difficult time, and this was based on her experience through the previous recession, there are clients that feel like a massage, a haircut, whatever it might be, is an essential cost. And they will keep coming to you no matter what the economy looks like, and they won't even for a second hesitate to book another appointment with you or book a class. But then there will also be people who are out of work, who are struggling financially and cutting corners and may not come see you for a while. Or there are all the people in between who are just nervous about sanitation and cleanliness and what's happening and whether they should start booking again or whether it's too soon. And these are all the concerns that we're especially hearing in big cities. And the key here is to remember that each of those audiences or each of those people has a different concern and a different fear that they're facing. And you can do a lot by communicating with them all individually and speaking to them directly. So you can do that through a single email by acknowledging those different concerns, or you can think about ways that you can use automated marketing or your emailing to speak to those different audiences, right? If you're sending out an email to clients who haven't booked with you for a while, that language might be different than a client that booked with you last week. And these are all things to think about and consider as you're writing. And they all kind of tie back into just always keeping your audience in mind and doing the very best you can to think about how they might be feeling. Okay, tip number 3, remember when your mom would say, "Don't take that tone with me"? That's my tip for this. So different topics require different tones. And there are some really great examples of this, right? If you think about when you write an email to your best friend planning her birthday party and it's full of exclamation points, that's very different than writing an email announcing to a no-show that you're charging them a fee filled with exclamation points. The same goes with, this is a good example, I'm going to use you, Jamie, sorry. Jamie, you're the expert. Jamie, you're the expert. Totally different things, right? And it's completely dependent on tone. Some words have negative effects too, and this is why you often hear in the customer support world that you should never use the word "but" with a customer. So you always acknowledge their concerns, their feedback, and even if you're going to offer them an alternative to what they're asking for, you never use "but" because it automatically feels like you're disagreeing with them. So there are all sorts of these examples floating around, and ultimately what this comes down to is thinking about the tone of your messaging and what type of tone actually is the most relevant for what you're doing right now. So how do I put this before I skip on to examples? A good way of kind of doing this, I think, is when you decide what the messaging is that you're going to send out, you can actually write down the tone that you're aiming for. So let's say you're sending out an email announcing that you're reopening. Do you want to take an excited tone? Do you want to take an informative tone? Maybe both. And one thing that I think will really help you is as you start brainstorming, what kind of concerns you should answer in your email, also think about just actually writing down the tone you want to go for before you start drafting the email or the message that you're sending. So here's this example from the fashion brand Reformation. Both of these emails were sent out during quarantine, and you can see that they look dramatically different. The tone is very different as well. So on the left, we have Reformation's announcement email that they are going to make and donate masks to the city of Los Angeles. So this is a very serious tone. It's an announcement that they're giving back and doing good, but it's also informative. So you see throughout this email that there's details regarding what the initiative will mean. There are links back to the official pages that you can read more on. And it ends on this very positive but very serious and communal note, which is, let's make masks, which is a really great tone to end on. To the right, you have Reformation's sort of more typical email. This is a sales email for their clothing. They're often very cheeky, and this is an email that I actually received in the same week as the first email. But this is more playful. So the "what day is it" headline, which, by the way, is one of my favorite Ryan Heffington dance songs. And then there's this whole joke about at what point can you switch between coffee in your mug and wine? And it's this playful idea of us all being stuck at home and working from home and the kind of fashion that you can wear doing that. So this email is appropriate for a group of people who maybe are shopping right now and find this playful attention to detail nice. And then on the left, you have this more serious tone. And there's no reason that you can't switch between the two depending on what you're trying to communicate to your clients. Okay, number 4, personalize as much as possible. So even if you're sending mass emails, you can get more personal than you maybe already are. And that's another important element of empathetic messaging. I think it was 2 weeks ago, Jay Nixon came to speak to us about fitness industry adaptation right now. And one of the more interesting things for me as a writer that I heard him say was that, especially with the extra time that we have right now, which is largely unfortunate, but a reality, that you actually can email your clients individually in certain cases. That if you have a client list of 20 repeat clients and you have the time, reach out to them, ask them how they're doing, remind them of the last conversation you had or the last thing you worked on together. If you have the time, being able to write a personal email, even if it's a one-off, is key because it's a great way to show that you're thinking of them and that you haven't forgot that they're out there going through all of this on a very individual basis. But even if you're doing automated marketing and you're sending out a series of emails to hundreds of clients or thousands of clients, you can still get personal. There are a few ways of doing this, right? I've already mentioned the idea of using you instead of clients and speaking directly to the single person reading your email. But another element that is incredibly helpful, especially right now, is to get a little vulnerable. So in your emails, tell some personal stories. Talk about how you're feeling. You don't have to go overboard. You don't have to overshare or reveal too much of your private life if you're a very private person, but you can share what you're going through as a way to make it more relatable to your clients. Here's a great quote from Brene Brown, which I think is important for this, which is, vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our lives, vulnerability is the path. So I think this is a fantastic quote. She uses the term empathy twice, but it's a great way to remind us that vulnerability isn't a negative thing. In fact, when you're messaging and communicating with clients during some of the most sensitive times that we've dealt with, vulnerability is going to help you a lot. Here are two examples that I think do a really great job of showing this vulnerability. So to our left, we have an email from Ritual, which is an online vitamin startup for anyone who's not familiar. And you can see here, this is what they sent out to let us know about how they're dealing with sanitation and shipment of their vitamins right now. And what really caught my eye when this came into my inbox was the very first sentence. As a mom of two and also one on the way, I know that keeping our families safe and protected is of utmost importance to us all. Every time I read this, and I've gone through this presentation a few times, I get goosebumps because even as someone who's not a mother, this moment of recognizing this woman who's dealing with motherhood and two children at home, as well as being pregnant during quarantine, is immediately recognizable as a very human, very difficult experience. And it says to me, the reader, that she's taking this really freaking seriously. And she cares about families and keeping them safe. And that when she writes this from the heart as someone who's worried about her own family and worried about their safety. And that's very meaningful to me to be able to relate to her and to understand that we're going through this together. On the right, we have Healthyish, which is a Bon Appetit newsletter. And this is an email from one of their editors. And one of the things that they've been doing during quarantine that's been really interesting to me and helpful is that all of their editors have been writing these sort of letters from the editor and sending them out each week. And this is a good example of one. But you can see here that the first paragraph says, I felt a lot of ways in the last week, and every feeling, whether it's sadness, fear, worry, gratitude, or love, has been intense. I've had anxiety so high that my throat constricts. I felt complete, irrational joy at the sight of the blossoms on a tree. I've laughed uncontrollably at photos of my friends' cats. I don't even like cats. And what's so great about this is she's basically summing up what we're all going through, right? That in one moment you can be in tears of stress or anxiety, and another you can be so grateful that you're spending more time with your family, or that you're spending time finally learning the things that you intended to learn 6 months ago or a year ago. You can be so grateful for your health and so terrified that tomorrow you might feel differently. And all of those things are so relatable that her writing this makes me feel that much closer to her and what she's communicating with me. Okay, number 5, keep it short. So this is a more technical one, but often we have a tendency to run long, especially when we're not quite sure what to say. And sometimes what you really need to say is just one thing. And it's okay to send an email that's only 4 sentences long if it covers everything that you need it to cover. So this is an example from Tribe Salon. It was actually forwarded to me by a colleague. And this is an email that they sent out to their client list, letting them know the absolute essential details of the COVID-19 closures. Literally, the headline is just, we've made some changes due to COVID-19. And you can see here that they've made just a simple bulleted list that discusses the potential reopen date, also offers a solution to anyone who is desperate to deal with their color growing out, which I thought was really savvy. And then also just links back to the CDC website, because ultimately the CDC is going to say it better than you can, right? And so the great thing about this is they knew that their clients had a single question, which was, what is going on and when can we book again? And they answered it to the best of their ability and let their clients know that they would be back in touch as soon as they knew more. And you know that they will be. So if you wake up and you want to communicate one thing to your clients and you're not really sure if that's enough to communicate with them about, ask yourself whether they're waiting for those answers. And if they are, and all it takes is for you to spend 10 minutes writing them an email that just lets them know that you're waiting to reopen for a few more weeks and you'll email them again as soon as you know, send it. It can be that short, or it can be longer if it needs to be. And some of you will find that as you start to introduce all of your new policies for reopening, you will need to send a long email that answers all of the questions so that you don't have to keep repeating yourself. And that's okay. But just go with your gut and make sure that you're answering everything thoroughly, but that you're communicating everything in the simplest way possible. Okay, number 6. Really, this should just be called spell check that shit. So number 6 is for all of the non-writers out there, but also for all of the writers, which is, I guess the main takeaway is, no matter how many times you've looked at this email that you're writing, your eyes will trick you. And in fact, the more times that you write, rewrite, edit, look at it again, go back, add links, check this, check that, the more likely you're going to mess something up. It's just a reality. And so one thing I would say is that as you're writing this messaging, like I mentioned at the beginning, it doesn't have to be perfect, but there are some very simple things that you can do to make sure that your writing stylistically is as strong as possible. One is spell checking, literally. The other thing is, before you send an email, get up and walk away, and ideally ask someone else to take a look at it for you. Now, if you have a spouse, a partner, a roommate, maybe they're willing to look over it for you, or you can email it to a friend. But you can also ultimately, if that's not possible for you, by sort of stepping away for an hour, making yourself a bougie matcha latte, sitting down in the backyard, and coming back again, you'll have a fresher set of eyes and catch things you probably wouldn't have seen before you hit send. So looking at an email for too long is a reality for everyone. In fact, here's a perfect example. As we were going through all of our messaging when everything like the COVID closures first started, I was writing a lot of emails. We were trying to communicate with you as quickly as possible, and we were trying to do it as thoroughly as possible. And I looked at this email probably 15 times. So did a series of other staffers. And some of you may have caught this already, but I, Kit Warchol, personally renamed this company Schedulicity. And I'm thrilled to say that it's a shorter word and fits a lot better into the tweets that we're sending out. However, that is not how we spell our name. And I sent this to the entire list. So mistakes happen to all of us, even the people that run the content for a company. But one of the things that you can do is really take that extra moment before hitting send and come back and reread it just one last time. I also would highly suggest reading things out loud. It helps with making sure that you have the tone right. It helps with making sure that things aren't silly sounding or a little overdone, and it helps catch those snags along the way. Another tip that we often talk about in writing in general is to cut the passive voice. So you probably learned all about passive versus active voice in high school English. But ultimately, I think the simplest way to keep this straight is to try to write like you speak as best you can. And again, this can be really helped with speaking it out loud. So if you're reading out loud and you feel like you sound very professorial and not like yourself at all, chances are you have some passive voice in here. So what I mean by that, on the left, we have a couple of examples of passive voice. And on the right, we have some active voice examples. So bear with me also, I tried to use create examples that are related to this industry, and blunt bobs came to mind. I don't know, I'm just creating examples. But so she was given a blunt bob for summer. That would be passive. Who gave her the blunt bob? Why and what? We don't know. Active, on the right, I gave her a blunt bob for summer. To the left, we have Sweat, our HIIT plus yoga class. I have this group chat. Sweat, our HIIT plus yoga mashup is our most adored class by clients. And on the right, you have clients adore our HIIT plus yoga mashup class, Sweat. So For those of you who are kind of like, I'm not totally seeing the difference, one of the best ways you can spot passive voice is if you look and you see to be verbs. So she was, our hit class is, that's usually a sign that you're in passive voice. And if you switch it over to a stronger verb, you're in active voice. But I know that that's a little technical and it can be annoying to kind of go through. And that's why, Grammarly is your new BFF. So for those of you who are not familiar with the online tool Grammarly, it's a free tool that you can download and install in your Chrome and use everywhere. And it will not only spell check all of your emails, it will also catch incidences of passive voice and tell you how to correct them. So I cannot recommend this tool more highly. Just install it and give it a try. It's going to make all of your emails that much better. I can't believe it's a free tool, but it's one of my favorite things. And I know that it's one of the favorite things for most writers out there. And one of the great things that they actually recently introduced, going back to tip 3, is this new tone sensor. So they'll actually read your email and tell you what tone they think your email is taking, and you can decide if that's what you're going for. So it's a really great way to kind of check your work at the very end before hitting send. All right. Last tip, number 7, is give them a next step. So in marketing, we call this a CTA, or a call to action. And what it is for every email, you should tell people what they need to do next, whether that's buying something, whether that's booking an appointment, or whether that's hitting reply to your email to let them know or let you know what it is that they need from you. In human speak, it's really called, it's really an invitation to continue to connect or communicate. And it's a really important element of empathy and empathetic messaging, because as people are trying to figure out what to do next, they want you to tell them very clearly what next steps they should take. So here are a couple of examples of really clear CTAs. On the left, we have another glossier example. How's your skin feeling? So that's a question speaking directly to your audience. And beneath, they're introducing their skincare routine generator. And the way that this works so well is this is a short and sweet email. I mean, look at this. I told you could write an email that's 4 sentences long. This is 1, 2, I guess. But they just are saying here in this button at the bottom, the CTA, start here. That's it. That's what they want you to do. You open this email and they give you one clear button to click and head the other way. The same goes on the right. Girlfriend Collective is this athleisure brand and athletic gear brand that I love, honestly, so everyone should check them out. I'm not being paid for this. But you can see here that they often run out of stock because they only make limited amounts of their workout gear. And this email that I received is about restocking some of the favorites. So we have this header that says, and we're back, and the button says straight up, shop back in stock. So for me, who opened this email seeing that they had just restocked some of my favorites, there's a button that says, here's exactly where you go. Do it right now. And those are really helpful, especially right now when people are just needing a little extra guidance and they just want you to kind of tell it like it is and tell them what to do straight. Okay, those are my 7 tips, and I hope that, as we go through the Q&A, I can answer any questions that I haven't covered yet. But one thing I'm really excited about, and we mentioned in the RSVP information, is that we wrote 3 email templates for all of you to use that are all sort of centered around the process of reopening. This bit.ly will send you to a download file of them as a doc format, but you can use them however you see fit. The way that I wrote them really allows you to customize them as much as you like, but I would say that also if there are portions of the emails that don't really apply to you or that you don't agree with, ignore it, remove it. Take what you like and leave what you don't. But ultimately, you'll find in here 3 templates. One for emailing clients and communicating with them right now if you don't know when you're going to reopen. One for communicating with them when you are ready to reopen. And one that's specifically for a policies email, which I know a lot of you had questions about. So it covers all of those aspects, and you can start kind of mixing and matching and using these as much as you like. But hopefully that will give you some real actual examples of how to message empathetically right now and move through that process. Okay, so I'm almost finished, but I thought we could end on a somewhat positive and playful note, which is with the king of empathy, RIP. For those of you who don't know, Bill Withers passed away last month, and you may be familiar with his famous song, Lean on Me, which I would say is possibly the most empathetic song of all time. So I'm going to play a final clip, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Jamie. Also, feel free to dance to this because we're all dancing away through quarantine.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but
Kit, where's your mic?
we know
Right here.
that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on.
And there we go. I would highly recommend you all listen to that whole song multiple times today, but I think that's probably good for a presentation on writing empathetic messages. And I will hand it back over to Jamie.
Well, thank you so much, Kit. We are seeing in the chat that all your tips are very, very beneficial, and I'm thinking that they will come in handy for lots of businesses here. We did want to go ahead and open it up for a Q&A session. If people would like to use the raise hand function or feature in their Zoom control panel, we will have Kit answer some of those questions that are coming in. I'll give everybody a little bit of time to raise their hand if anybody wants to ask something. Kit, how can people reach out to you if they have questions for you personally? Do you want to give your email too?
Yeah, totally. And I was going to say, Gabe just called me out because it's true. The best part of that song was coming. I was tempted to let everybody listen to the full 3-minute long song, but I figured we would all go off in our own time. You can all message me, and I've said this a few times. I run the blog here as well as a lot of the emails and everything, and we're trying our best to cover as many industries as we can and to write as empathetically as possible on the blog as we can. So if you ever have any article ideas or topics that you feel like we should be doing a better job of covering, I'm always here to listen. So you can actually send me a message directly to my Schedulicity email address, which is kit.warchol, my last name, at schedulicity.com. And I will reply and definitely talk to you about it. You can also give us feedback through our social media channels because Hannah, who's been throwing links into the chat, is on there and is one of the most communicative and fantastic people on our team. So if you ever have any questions, thoughts, concerns, reach out to us. If you have questions about the service and actually using Schedulicity, we also have our great rock stars, but I'm always here to talk about content for sure.
Thank you. So Kimberly said that she has an idea. She sent her favorite recipe to all of her clients. So love to hear that. That's really fun during this time when we're all definitely doing more cooking in our kitchen.
Yeah, and I remember last week in Lori's, a series of people have said this, but in Lori's presentation last week, she recommended emailing your clients once a week right now. And I know that there were some questions about what do you say if you still don't have any of the answers about when you're reopening? And this is a great example. Your clients have a lot of time if they're at home right now, and they're waiting and ready to receive an email from you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about business, right? It can be recipe links, or I think it honestly was another Reformation email where it was just some good news. And the Reformation email had a link in it to an article about the fact that more people are fostering and adopting animals than ever. And it was just a little nice share for a day when we were maybe having a tough time. And so thinking about ways that you can communicate with your clients like you would from your salon chair or from your studio is definitely another approach. You know, a lot of what you do in your businesses is make small talk and talk to people about their lives. I know that I talked to my hairstylist about my Tinder dates. So it's you can still communicate about informal moments while you're waiting to get more news from your government about reopening.
All right, any other questions? Maybe we should move into the grant giveaway, and if we get any questions, we'll be sure to circle back and answer those. But it is kind of the best time. So, push the next slide so we can show that fancy.
Oh, fancy.
Yay. Okay. So Schedulicity Cares grant giveaway time. We do have a winner, and I just want to thank everybody for sending us their entries. It's always nice to hear how everybody is supporting one another during this time. So the winner of today's Town Hall Schedulicity Cares grant giveaway is Teresa Young with Sacred Soul Massage and Bodywork. So she has been with Schedulicity for 5 years, and right now she is donating masks to her community, and she is also doing a lot of self-care things. She has a self-care option right now, and then she's also giving away boxes with self-care items, including aromatherapy and other things. And she's also doing one-on-one sound meditation web calls free of charge right now. So congratulations to you, Teresa, and thank you so much for being here.